Hey guys, I'm Ingrid. Welcome. As a card maker, I buy new paper crafting products and I just don't want to make one card. I want to get the most out of my supplies, don't you? This video is all about that. It's about getting 5 ideas from one stamp. You can see here I've got the very cool Snow Trail stamp by Penny Black. My friend Ardith and I are behind in creating for the season, so we thought it would be fun to challenge each other to come up with 5 ideas from the same stamp set. I just happen to be using one very large stamp. You can see I'm just kind of throwing down an anti-static bag onto a piece of craft cardstock. I'm using the embossing pad by Wow just to ink up my background stamp. I love these kind of stamps, but sometimes when I get them home, I'm not going to lie, it can be a little bit of a challenge for me to come up with various ideas beyond that great initial one that sparked the desire to purchase the stamp. So this collaboration is really timely. Ardith and I are each going to come up with 5 ideas, so be sure to head over to her channel when you're done and check out the 5 ideas that she came up with one stamp set too. I want you to stay tuned throughout this video. First off, it's loaded with tips all along the way. And, if you have any questions, to definitely leave me a comment below. I am happy to answer those for you. So I'm just going to throw down a piece of, that's just copy paper, and I've got some primary bark embossing powder by Wow, and just kind of throw that down over this. The thing that's awesome about Wow powders, and I don't know if you knew this, but it has anti-static in it. You're still going to use an anti-static bag, at least I do, just to help get rid of anything else. It's not 100% necessary, but this is a really big area. But look at that. Looks awesome, doesn't it? Just quickly emboss. Notice I heat set it from both sides. I love to heat up the fibers from both sides. It makes it go faster. I also preheat my heat tool for 30 seconds to help prevent the warping of the paper. Now you could leave this like that, but we're going to add a very quick little sentiment. I'm going to do a little stamp surgery and remove the peace from that peace, love, and joy, and emboss that onto the paper. And we're going to do a little bit of ink blending. Now I'm using some of these great little makeup brushes. These are some of the smaller tools that you have in here, and it's perfect for adding a little bit of snow to your scene. We're going to take some tea-dye distress ink, and I'm going to end up using probably close to 6 different shades of brown. I'm going to kind of experiment throughout this, and I'll list all the different colors that I used. You want to pick something that really matches what you have there for the embossing powder. And you can see here I'm using this little domed round kind of mini tool and just kind of going back and forth along that edge. I'm not pressing down too hard. I'm just adding a little tiny bit of ink to my project. And what that's doing is it's just kind of creating the shadow of where the snow is. Granted, we're doing this all in brown, so you might think it looks like dirt, but it's not. It's supposed to be snow. If this was a white scene, I'd be using like tumbled glass or, some sort of a baby boy type of blue, something that's really light. So you can see here I'm experimenting, taking out more of my browns. I love all the different browns that the Distress line has. It has a lot, and I love mixing it also with my Catherine Pooler inks. They interchange really nicely. So you can see here I sped this up, and I'm going to do that throughout this entire tutorial today because we have a lot to cover. And I'm just going to add lots of different shading. You can see I'm adding more snow there to the foreground. And next up, we're going to actually do the little vignette portion that I do on a lot of my scenic stamps. You're going to see this here at real time. You can see how I'm angling that smaller, this an oval toothbrush makeup brush. Now, I have several different types. I have a couple of inexpensive brands from Amazon. I also have the life-changing brushes, and I have a video coming up shortly that's going to review the differences between those all. You can use any of them. They're all great. But you can see here I really kind of do it on an angle, and it's really key to kind of keep the most pressure off your paper in order to get that really flawless, effortless look there at the edge. You want to have it be more of a feathered look versus something that is a little too dark. And I'm really kind of concentrating that on the edges. And you can see here, even though this is from above, I'm still keeping the bulk of that pressure like you saw in the first couple clips there, how it was a little bit more off the paper than on the paper. That's really key for me in my scenic creations. Now, see how that ink blending added so much to that scene? Wait till you see what else we come up with. This last part is really crucial also whenever you're making these scenes. Now, your paper really kind of goes through the ringer, especially with all the embossing. So you can see how it's kind of warped. I use this iCraft mixed media glue. I love this adhesive. It's fabulous. There's a new Nuvo glue out there. Whatever you use, I encourage you use some sort of a liquid glue. And the reason being is it's a little more forgiving and you can really kind of get that out to the edges. And sometimes you kind of need to move this around a little bit. Now I'm going to really come in as a close-up here in a second and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. I want you to kind of look at the edges here. See how it's still kind of up there? Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lay down all my acrylic blocks for some weight. It's one of the reasons I love this giant acrylic block. And just let it sit there for a minute or two and that's going to get adhered really well. So you can kind of see what effect this really had, and you can see I added some clouds even to the sky, and I'm going to show you how to do some of that later on. And here's another one that I did. I embossed silver onto navy blue cardstock, and look at how beautiful that is. And that's a 1-layer card. Super simple, great card. For this project, we've already gone ahead and embossed the scene on a piece of cardstock. And you can see here that I've just kind of inked up a portion of the stamp and put down a piece of Post-it tape. Now I'm just cutting it out. And this is kind of along the, we'll call it the horizon line. This is where the snow line meets the trees. Just kind of tightening that up because I did stamp it in a really, really light shade, so it was kind of hard to see. I'm going to take a little bit of larger size of one of the makeup brushes and just kind of putting in some of the sun. And I realized that even though this had just been cleaned, I must have still had a little bit of blue in there because it was coming out green. And you can see that there's a little bit of ink on the ink pad there. So as long as it was coming out bright yellow, this is the Limoncello by Catherine Pooler. This ink is a really, really nice bright yellow. And then I can go ahead and use it again without the fear of continuing to contaminate my ink pad, which I can just very easily clean afterward. Now we're going to come into, this is Coral Cabana, and this is a really nice kind of pinkish red color coral, obviously, right at the horizon line there. And I'm using a different brush and just depositing some of that ink there just in a real light, circular motion. This right here is Spice Marmalade by Distress, and I love this orange color. It's such a great color. And just going to continue to add that and then blend that for a nice, smooth, effortless transition. It's really important to come back in with your other color and just kind of cross blend those. So now that we've added that, we're going to add Bellini. And Bellini is a great transitional color. It's really crucial whenever you have two complementary colors that are going to be in close proximity to each other, say a blue and an orange like the Spice Marmalade, and we're going to add Broken China, which is a blue, right above the Bellini. The Bellini kind of acts as that buffer between the two because they don't interact really well, and they create kind of a muddish color, or even if you're going to have like yellow and blue which turn green, you want to try to avoid that, and Bellini is that kind of nice shield to do that. So you can see here I keep switching my brushes, and it's important that you have several brushes to do this, or you can use the round mini ink blending tools as well. I'm really digging the makeup brushes. It's been a tool that I've been using now for about 6 months, and I have several different types. I have the generic kind that you can find on Amazon. I also have the more designed for paper crafting ones by Picket Fence Studios, and the life-changing brushes, and I really kind of like them all. There are a couple distinct differences between them, and I'll go over that in a separate video. And you can see here I'm adding Daydream. Daydream is a really, really deep, rich color, and I'm adding that to the top here. And I like to finish off my scenes with a little bit more of a vibrant depth to them. So Broken China is a really wonderful color. That's the lighter blue that I use. It's a step up from Tumble Glass, which we're going to use for the snow. And I think that you'll find that the Catherine Pooler line of inks and the Distress line of inks, they blend really well together. They are, to me, it's an expansion of the Distress line to use the Catherine Pooler inks. They fill gaps that have existed for a long time, and I really love using both brands together. So here you go. Look at that. That is a beautiful sunset. I'm really enjoying the sky. Now, I need to do a little bit of fill-in, so I'm using a Micron 08 pen, and this is going to just kind of fill in where I had my mask and I kind of over-masked it a little bit, and I had a little bit of sunset underneath the trees, which doesn't really work. So a Micron pen is something you really want to have on hand because it's a great way to fill in those silhouette images. Now we're going to use tumble glass, and tumble glass to me is the color for snow. There is no better color for snow. You need to have that really super light blue that kind of gives you that ice feeling, and that's what this is. And I'm using one of the elongated brushes. When you get some makeup brushes, they usually have some of these smaller sizes, and the smaller sizes are really, really great for scenic stamping. So you can see here I'm kind of getting in here versus using a really, really big, huge brush. Now for this next part, I'm going to leave it at full speed because I want you to see how I do the snowdrifts. This first part I kind of left in. I made the mistake of using this mask, which had quite a bit of coral cabana on there. And it kind of came off with the blue, and I'm like, oh, pink does not work in there. So, but that's okay, you know, never fear. We're just going to go over it. So I took a couple of pieces of just some tape, and this is the purple tape that I have that's around, and it just kind of created a snowbank. I tear a lot of my purple tape, so it had a really nice rough edge to it. It worked. And I took this nice and slow. I have one of the smaller sizes, and I'm just adding a little bit of tumble glass. And the thing with snowdrifts is you want to build up your depth a little bit. So initially when you first add a little bit of color, you may not see anything. So you might need to add a little more, and that's what I'm doing. Just kind of adding just a little tiny layer over layer, and that's why you're going over that time and time again. Now I'm not going too in depth here because I don't want the snowdrifts to become the star of the show. The sunset is really the star of the show. I just wanted to add a little something to the foreground. You can see here I'm adding a little bit also to the corners, and that just kind of helps to build those banks that I have going on there. I have some really great close-ups here at the end of this project, which kind of show you the very light feel of these banks. And right here, basically, I'm elongating that path that's kind of coming to the front at an angle. And these are just, you know, you have these shadows in snow, and that's really what I'm working on. And at the very end of this video, I will link also to another video that has, or down in the description box, that goes into snowdrifts a little bit more in detail. So just adding a little bit more along the path there, and it's looking pretty good. The only thing left would be a sentiment, which, you know, you don't need to watch me add. I just embossed a very simple sentiment to finish out the scene, and then added this to some white cardstock. You don't want to overdo it. The scene is really the star of the show. And there you have it. Nice, simple scene piece embossed in black. And look at those drifts. Aren't they beautiful? And they add so much to the scene. You know, it just really kind of completes it. But look at that sunset. I just love ink blending on scenic cards. This project is probably one of my favorites out of the bunch. We're going to take some Sandcastle ink by Catherine Pooler and just kind of getting that down. And this is Sand Dunes cardstock, also by Catherine Pooler. You can use any craft cardstock. Sandcastle is a really nice neutral shade. It has a little bit of warmth to it, which I really love. It's really the true color of sand. And you can see there, that right there is just a really nice, simple card. We're going to use some white pens. Now you can use Posca paint pens, or you can use the white jelly roll pens. That's what I'm using right here. Now we're going to do a little bit of edging first, and you've already seen me do this in other projects, so I sped it up really quick. I did slow it down when I went on the angle because I zoomed in a little to kind of help you to see how I angle the brush again. And then we're going to speed that right back up and get back into our project. But this is really important for this kind of a project because you really want to have that vignette. It draws the viewer into the scene. It just kind of pulls you in. And this particular project, by the time we get to the end, when you see the fresh snowfall, that's really what you want. You want to feel like you're standing right there looking out at, you know, the horizon there where the pathway ends into the distance. So now we're going to add the white. Now this is called highlighting, but in this case, we're actually going to be depositing fresh snowfall. You can see it's just a very simple up and down motion. I'm just kind of pouncing the pen up and down, depositing one dot at a time. And it doesn't take actually that long to fill the whole scene. We're gonna try to not overdo it, but what I really wanted to do was kind of add that fresh snowfall feel. You know how when snow first falls and it just kind of first grabs onto wooded areas, and you kind of have a smattering of big little flakes. That's really kind of what I was trying to evoke here. And you can see here I'm just adding, like I said, pouncing up and down just one dot at a time. I like to add them in little clusters, and you can also spread them around on limbs. That's actually a really nice look. And on some of these more birch-like trees, I was kind of grouping them just like white spots on birch is actually. And it seemed to turn out pretty well. I was very happy with it. And some of those trees in the distance, they had big white gaps in them. And I deposited snow there because to me, that's what they were going for, was to have that, felt like they were laden with a little tiny bit of snow, just starting to get there. We're gonna make sure to add some little snowy accents, not just to all the wood trees, but also to the little fence posts and just up along there, especially kind of accenting that pathway or walkway right there. Really important. So here you can see I slowed this down, and then we're going to speed this right back up so that we can get through this part, just because you don't need to see me do this all in regular time. But you wanted to show you how it's sitting on top of the fence posts on each one. That's really important, especially in the little corners. I'm kind of adding them to the little corners there. This is really a great way to add some interest to a scene. I love these little tiny jelly roll pens. I get them locally at my art store, and I'll provide some links for you below. All the supplies for all the projects are going to be listed below. And you know, it's really something that you want to have multiples of these, because gel pens to me sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. So I usually have, I'm not kidding, this is going to sound a little excessive, but I have no less than 10 of these on hand, because I never know what's going to happen. And a lot of times when I do my scenic cards, I need to have a way of bringing in the light. And Posca pens are really great too. Those are more paint. The jelly roll is a pigment. And you know, when you're doing a scene and you have the darkness, you want to sometimes bring in a little bit of light. And wherever your light source is, if it's a nighttime scene, you want to add just those little highlights of the light bouncing off of things. That's why I do this. Now, next up, we're going to use Bombay White India ink, and this is by Dr. P.H. Martin. It's a very liquid ink, and it's going to sit on top of your surface. So this is going to provide our fresh snowfall. I have a very, very cheap paintbrush, very, very cheap. I bought like a pack of cheap brushes for this purpose. You don't want to use anything good. And I just added some to a block, and this block is an older block, and it has a very, very sharp kind of edge, and which works really well in this instance. So I had actually already mounted my project onto my base. Next time I would probably do this without the base, but just want to kind of load that, and we're just going to flick it off. Now, initially I got bigger drops than I intended. I should have done this a little bit on a scrap piece before. I always like to do that no matter how many times I have done this type of a technique. You can see you add the India ink just with a little dropper there. And it actually worked really well, because what those big drops did, it made it feel like they were closer to me, and that's all about perspective in scenes. And in scenic cards, you really want to kind of have that. You want to have that little something that's bigger in the forefront, because it makes the scene a little more realistic. So I did need to dry this. Now, I did not heat set the whole thing. I mostly let this dry on its own, and then I added a little more to it, and I just really love how this turned out. The tone-on-tone look to the card, the freshness, the snowfall really close up, the big drops, everything, it really all came together very well. You could easily mass produce these, just kind of sitting watching a movie and just relaxing. This is a really nice card. I really enjoy it. I hope you do too. These last two projects are really cool. I used Midnight ink by Catherine Pooler, which is an archival ink, and that's really important because you're going to need something that's not going to move. I'm using glossy cardstock here, And on a piece of navy, I went ahead and embossed the same scene, and we're going to cut it out using some large circle dies. I've got the second to largest size of dies here. Again, all the supplies are listed below. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple different techniques. Now I'm going to use these separately. We're going to create a little window here, and we're going to do some very cool coloring using the ink swipe technique, which is something a little different. And we're going to use a couple cool tools to do that. And then this other circle, we're going to do another card, and we're going to use the spotlight technique. This is going to go super fast, this one. Again, stamped tone on tone with Sandcastle, and I'm going to basically just lay that on top, just kind of piecing it together like a puzzle. And I spotlighted that scene, stamped, and did a little edging. That's it. A little bit of linen thread. That one is done. That was quick, right? But it's great to get 2 projects out of 1. So we're going to use a color box stylus tool with a sponge tip, and that's that really long tool, as well as some of those oval toothbrush applicators. And again, we're using some of the smaller sizes. You know, I think if you've ever seen people use these, and again, I've been using these for about 6 months now, I really love them. You see them use the larger ones. The smaller ones are great for scenic cards. I'm going to do a little bit of a pouncing method here. Notice I didn't mask anything off. And that's what's so great, is these brushes come in so many different sizes that you can really get in here and add a little bit of color very easily to the edge of scenes. And it's nice when you don't have to always mask everything off, right? So now that we've intentionally deposited a little bit of ink here, this is really important, because this technique, the ink swipe technique using the color box stylus tool, we need to have some ink deposited in order to swipe it across the glossy cardstock. And that's what I'm doing here on the edge. Before dragging it across, I need to have a little bit of ink there. Now, in the past, I've always done a lot of these scenes just with the color box stylus tool, but I'm really enjoying having the oval makeup applicators as well, because they make it a little easier to get some ink down. Now, once I have a little bit of ink sitting on top of my cardstock, and glossy allows the ink to not necessarily soak right in so quickly, it gives you a little bit more playtime, and you can kind of swipe and create this beautiful wispy kind of scene, sky coloring. It's really cool. I love this technique, especially for scenic stamping. So I'm just kind of swiping these 2 pinks. Lighter shade is Sponge Sugar, and the darker shade is Picked Raspberry. And I really love these 2. We're kind of creating a cotton candy sky. You can see I got a little pink in my snow scene, but we're going to put this on top, so that really wasn't such a big deal. But you know what? I know better, and I should have put a little something down. It's just good. It's a good thing to have your hand rest on something that's not your scene, because your fingers have oils and it deposits it onto, especially the glossy cardstock. It really does stick to that, and then you'll find that there's no amount of ink that you can add to cover that up. So it's good to get into the habit of having something to hold on to. We're going to speed this up a little bit, starting off with Tumble Glass, just adding that extra color there, and that's again that base that I'm going to use so that I can swipe very easily and quickly. So we're going to use a little bit of Tumble Glass and then add some broken china in various spots. When I'm doing the ink swipe technique, and I have another video that I will link in the description box below along with all the supplies as well, when you're doing this particular technique, you're kind of swiping across, and you're creating this sweeping motion, and it creates these beautiful wisps of color, or if you want to interpret it as clouds or whatever you want to interpret it as in the sky. I like to do them at different heights. I don't necessarily like them all to connect. I kind of like it when they are just slightly offset. It creates a very beautiful, interesting sky with a little bit of diversity in it. So once we've added those couple colors, we're going to bring in a little bit more. It's important to bring that blue also, like you just saw, down into the pink as well, because that gives it a little bit of variety, and it's not all pink. You know, it kind of breaks it up. You want to try to not overlap them too much. I did overlap them a little bit, which does cause a very interesting look. It has a little bit of a purplish hue to it, because that's what happens when you combine pink and blue. It creates a very pretty purple. So I have a little bit of lavender in spots as well. We're moving on to Stone Blue, and Stone Blue is a really nice kind of cloudy blue color. It's really great for scenes. It's definitely a must-have color for any scenic stamping, and that's, again, a Catherine Pooler ink. Remember, Distress and Catherine Pooler, together, it is one phenomenal collection. And they both last really well. They're both very highly water reactive. The properties are very similar, and they're both highly, highly translucent. I love both collections. So you can see here, I'm just really kind of adding a little bit more here. And this is Salty Ocean. I didn't want to add too much because it's a very powerful color, very bright blue. And I wanted the sky to have a little bit of an ethereal feel, you know, not necessarily be so in your face, but it needed a little bit more. It couldn't be all light and airy. And then at the top, we're going to add some darker colors. I'm going to add a little bit of Chip Sapphire as well, which is a really dark blue, and that's going to be at the very top. You're going to see me bring the circle back and forth throughout the project, and that's because I'm trying to remember where exactly my color needs to be. Because remember, this is almost like a reverse spotlighting. We're just really highlighting that one area. And the other card had the other piece, which is actually spotlighting. So this is kind of cool. Now, if you were to offset this, you could create a very cool shaker card, you know, with some clear sequins and beads. There's so many things you can do with this, and I love this. You might have recalled another project, I'll link that one also below, where I did this with using a snowflake and some glitter, and it was a scene with a wintry forest in the distance with a deer. That was a very cool project, and that really showcases the swipe technique as well. In a much longer video, so you'll have a lot more instruction. This one's kind of fast because we're doing so many projects. Adding a little bit of tumble glass here again for snow. What did I say? It's the best color for snow. You don't want to add too much because this is really more about the sky, but you need a little bit. Making sure that everything's dry, and you got to cut this down in order to get it to sit exactly right, and it's going to come all the way to the edge. And then once you have that, to kind of create that shadow box effect, you're going to need some foam tape. Now, I had quite a bit here. I'm going to jump ahead. You don't have to watch all this. And then you're going to really specifically make sure to get that scene together. What's nice is the glossy cardstock and the foam tape, you know, they don't adhere necessarily right away. You have a couple seconds to just kind of manipulate and move that around. Don't forget to go watch all of Artist's projects. She's an incredible stamper. Make sure you subscribe to both our channels if you enjoyed the material. We both put up a lot of videos. And this right here, that's a great little tool to get rid of any stray embossing little flecks that might have gotten there, especially when you're working with white, right? I love these 5 projects, and I have so many more ideas, so I decided that I'm going to create a little series. So to see the next video, be sure to click that top video right there. If you want to see some other stuff, click the video right below it and be sure to subscribe. Hit that notification bell, and I'll see you over in the next video.